Hello, and welcome to another video log of Aperture 64's Aperture Speaks. And today it's pretty much looking at the self-portraits. I posted a self-portrait last Friday on my blog, and I thought I had quite a few images, so I would probably just share another one here. And also some of my thoughts about self-portraits. As I said in the blog, I don't really like my picture being taken. And I think this stems from why I became a photographer in one way, is because I never wanted to actually be standing in front of the camera. I think the only day in my life so far that I was sort of more happier to stand in front of the camera was on my wedding day, but that's probably because I was high on adrenaline or something like this, and I really didn't care too much about having my picture taken. And so generally I don't have my picture taken, but when I do, I want to have control of this. So I would normally sort of set up the shot and then either hand the camera to someone else and run into position, just so I have the control of the way that I possibly look. And I think that's probably it. I'm probably quite self-conscious about the way I actually look. So when I'm sort of thinking about a self-portrait, I generally just sketch out an idea of where I'm going to have where I'm going to take the picture and what is there, and then how I can look best in this. So in this particular image, I'm actually sat in my chair, and I'm using the window and the sort of see-through curtains I have as a backdrop, which I'm going to try and overexpose. Now, trying to mix the exposures together, you can do this in Photoshop quite easy, and especially in Adobe Camera Raw, when you can just like drag the exposure up and then sort of using the local adjustments. Particularly, I like that, but I also like I like stacking images together and taking different bits from different ones, and that's what I'm doing in this particular edit. I basically stack the images one on top of each other and use the blown out highlights, and then with the normal exposure, I just sort of painted it in. But then I had a very underexposure, which all we've done on a single file. I just duplicated the file and I just pulled the exposure plus and minus in Adobe Camera Raw, and then I load them with stacks. So here I'm just painting in the overexposure. And this was one of the ideas, like sketching out, having some sort of idea of how I would do this in post-production, especially if it's going to be a little bit complex, think of different elements I need to have and things. One of the hardest things is actually getting the picture in focus. And when people ask me how to do this, I say put something in that place if you're going to focus it through the camera. If your camera has one of these sort of swizzly LCD things you can turn around, that's what I used. The only thing I found a bit difficult was actually focusing was quite hard. And I did it manually in the end, trial and error, because in a good portrait, it's having the eyes really sharp and nicely in focus. So put something in its place, and then once you got the focus position right, you can then click the camera into manual focus, and you can take the pictures, happily, knowing that they are actually in focus in the first place. If your camera has, I know one of my older Sigma lenses actually has the focus distance on the focusing ring, and you can use this as well. Also, try standing in the corner, because then you can just focus on the corner, and stand in sort of the middle, instead of standing like in the middle of a room, or stand in front of a wall and you can focus on the wall and then work out, just have quite a wide depth of field. In these particular images, I wanted a very shallow depth of field. I really wanted it quite shallow. I wanted a longer lens, and the reason for this is I have quite a round face, and if I use the very wide lens, my face just goes out and I look like I'm a hamster chewing something. But if I use a slightly longer lens, it sort of condenses things. So I wanted or brings things closer together, and so I wanted to use a very shallow depth of field. I used the I think it was an f5 on this particular one, and then I was quite a big distance from the window itself. I was about 2 meters from the window, and then the camera was then about a meter ahead. To take the picture, I used my remote control. Really quite cool thing. If you can get a wireless remote, they're on Amazon quite cheap. I think mine was about £10. I don't dollars. I don't actually know how much that is. Maybe about $20. Actually, it's quite cheap, and only every now and again I've had to change the battery inside the actual remote bit. But if that bit fails, you also have there's also a hand trigger remote as well. It's really good for all sorts of occasions, especially when you have long exposures and things like this. So, just really work together, thinking about that. You can use a timer if you don't have the remote. You can obviously set the timer, set it going. Someone mentioned in the last blog post how my eyes looked sort of natural. Didn't have the sort of like self look. And one of the things is I sort of sit as if I'm a model, not looking at the camera, which is quite easy to do when you have the remote and you sort of set everything up. With a timer, you sort of go run into position. Try and have the timer on the longest setting, just so you can get quite naturally and get quite relaxed in the picture. Try not to look at the camera. The minute you start looking at the camera, that's when you get weird things. I did have some images of that when I was sort of looking. If you can, set to 1 minute the timer, if you can, so you can just run into place. What I decided to do with this particular image is I wanted a very sort of cinematic feel. That's probably the best way I'm going to describe it. So this is this was the 4-color Technicolor that I used, and I'm just sort of playing around with the warmth of the image here. I'm actually going to use 2 different filter sets, and I just added a light leak here just to, because really that right side of the image is to be quite blown out. So this was the first part, just actually getting the basic toning. So I've painted all the layers in, and then I've made a smart object, and then I used the alien skin exposure to get this Technicolor 4 color. They had like 4 layers on the film. It was quite a nice little thing. So obviously here I'm just sort of looking. I'm saving the image actually at the minute. That's why it's quite still. And I now decided to add in the filter from Color Effects. I then wanted to have a bleach bypass feel to the image. Now bleach bypass really, oh my goodness, that was a bit crazy there. Here's bleach bypass. It really, really, really contrasts the image. And you can look a bit bizarre. So I sort of played around with it until I could get something that really was going to work. And so once I'd done that, I then decided to add in over the top, trying to just sort of get some color into the image, and I was trying a few different options. At this point, I had no clear aim. I had an aim of what I was looking for, but not quite how to get there. And that's such a nice way to work, actually, sometimes as well. You don't know how you're going to get to the final point, but you know where the final point is. So you can sort of experiment around. I just want adding some color. I know there needs to be a little bit more color, so I'm just trying to get it all added together, just to get it looking nice. And one of the things is I wanted very subtle tones on my skin, so not oversaturated at all. And it worked out quite well. I think the only thing I didn't like was the blue, the hoodie that I'm wearing. It's grey, and so it actually now looks quite cold. So I have to fix that with just an adjustment filter, really. I think one of the things about a self-portrait is that it has to actually capture who you are. And the other thing about a self-portrait is it has to look, for me, a good self-portrait has to look like you haven't taken the picture of yourself. So when you see all these sort of pictures, like standing in front of a mirror, you can use a mirror, and you can have the camera in your hand, and that does actually look quite nice. But I prefer ones where it's you in a scene, and you've set up, and it looks like someone has actually taken a picture of you, but it's actually you who's taken it. Because then, for me, it looks like there actually is some sort of technical skill in that. Even setting up the entire shot and then getting someone else to press the trigger. But there's nothing against using mirrors, of course. It's quite nice. But when you stand in front of the mirror, you got it at your hand length. They don't look to me very appealing. Obviously, that's my own personal taste. So, as long as it captures who you are, and I think, I'm slouched in my desk chair, which is pretty much who I am. I quite like cinema. I quite like the idea of one day I could actually even translate a book into film. It would never happen because I'm an atrocious writer. But I like the idea, or maybe even work in the film. That does seem quite interesting to me. So all these sort of ideas are quite nice. Oh, straight hair. We better get rid of the straight hair. And so that's for me like one of the things. This sort of does look like me. It does sort of represent who I am, and so it in that way it sort of works quite nicely. I quite like the idea of the image, and this sort of like blown. I've really the whole idea of having that blown out on the right. That was really the key for me for what I wanted from this image originally. So capture yourself in a self-portrait. Now I don't do self-portraits very often, so whenever I do them, it's quite rare, and I actually do have quite a lot of fun making them. I may make some more in the future. I know I want to do one. There is one I've been thinking about a lot, but I would probably need to lose a little bit of weight to actually make it really work. And that sounds quite strange. To make a photo work, I need to lose some weight. But there you are. So here's the final image. For me, it does look like this is maybe a still from a movie in a way, that I'm just sort of sat in the chair and just turning around. I quite like my hair in this photo. It's a very strange thing to say. I like the idea of this blown up side, the light leak then as well coming across, and then coming across the shadow on the other side, and it does actually work quite well. The skin tones are pretty okay. I've purposely burnt in the stubble on where my moustache would be for my beard, because I only recently shaved it off, so I like the idea of being slightly darker. And you can also see where I've cut myself as well, which makes it look quite natural. And you can see the grey hairs in my beard, which I purposely enhanced to make it look more there. Look like it's there. So there you go. Hope you enjoy the image. Really, you won't probably see another self-portrait for a while. So that's it. Thanks so much for watching, and follow me on my blog. My blog is WordPress. Aperture64.wordpress.com. I have a Twitter account, which is @Aperture64, and I take part in a photo chat every week now. I did the first one last week. I also have my Facebook page, which is facebook.com/Aperture64. If you don't have Twitter, follow me on Facebook, because all my Twitter posts end up on the Facebook page anyway, and so do all my blog posts. So you can sort of like catch up through there if you don't want to follow the blog directly. Apart from that, I hope you have a great week. The sun is shining here, so I'm just about to go outside and take some landscape photos. And I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.